Join us as we speak with a whole host of expert navigators through the land of parenting. They'll offer you stories, validation, and a few directions to help you find your way if you're feeling a little lost. So Kelsie Olds, also known as the Occupational Therapist, is an occupational therapist who shares every day with thousands of people online, including me. I really enjoy her work and her sharings online. She shares with parents, teachers, fellow professionals, and adults healing their own childhoods about the power of play in children's lives. Kelsie has worked with kids in all kinds of settings, from rural Oklahoma to an Air Force base in England to their current home in Geelong, Victoria. And I'm really thrilled that you're in Australia now. Their experiences across different countries and systems give them a unique perspective on how healthcare and education shape childhood. Welcome, Kelsie.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So we would love to know a little bit about you and how you got to this point, literally other side of the world from where you started, and why you're passionate about, so this podcast is about mindfulness, attunement, play, and self-care. I imagine you might go with play, but, you know, how we ended up right here today. I'm really curious to learn more about you.
Well, there's almost different frameworks that you could come at it, or different lenses you could put on to talk about like where the page came from or how I got to where I am. But a big component of it was my frustration with feeling like a lot of access to healthcare is paywalled in the United States in a way which is where I'm from. Yeah. Given the accent, which in a way that is really, really limiting for lots and lots of people. And I understand that there are access issues and barriers to therapy in, many places. So I'm not trying to say that this is U.S. specific, but I do think that it is, in my experience, hard for people in England specifically and Australia specifically to understand how limited the access can be in the States. And so I felt like I had all of this information, but that it was, that it shouldn't have to be, you have to jump through 85 hoops for me to be able to tell you really simple stuff like, it's okay if your way that you guys do your evening routine looks different from the way you've seen someone do it in a movie or the way you did it growing up, or it's okay if, your kid needs lots of uninterrupted time to just like play and explore, or like things that just felt really, really basic. That would be what I would be telling people for my job. And then it was still kind of in the middle of COVID. I was having a lot of clients who were struggling to come to sessions, or everything would go to virtual therapy for a while. And then, people wouldn't be able to do the telehealth that they had planned on or whatever. And the end result was that I was writing lots and lots of emails as therapy, sort of, because everybody was in the thick of a pandemic and we were just trying to figure out what to do. And I felt so guilty about keeping any information to myself that I would write people like 5,000 word emails.
I can imagine. I know how long your amazing posts are on Facebook. So I'm thinking, one-on-one emails would be great.
There's no chance on the planet that people would be reading these emails because they were already desperately overwhelmed, overworked, living in a pandemic, had a kid at home who's like 3 and has, some really high support needs, and then they're like looking for help, and I just, to me it felt like if I was like, here's a tiny little drip of information, that might have actually been more useful, but at the time I was really struggling with how much it felt like it would be like me being like, well, I have so much that could help you, but I'll only just give you a tiny little bit because, like, I'm like, whatever, like, here I benevolent me giving you this tiny little bit of help. And so instead I would just try to be like, I'll just give you everything I know that could possibly be helpful. But then in so doing, I was actually being overwhelming. And as I struggled to navigate that balance, then I started being like, what I really want to do is just write all of the things that I want to write and just like put them out there. And then if people like want to look for stuff, then they can just like search for it with a term, or they can just look, or, whatever. And then another overlapping lens is that at the same time I took over doing the social media for the clinic that I was working at. So I was already scheduling stuff online and making posts. And a lot of times I would write out my thoughts on it, and then I would realize my thoughts were a little too radical for the whole entire clinic. They didn't actually represent the views of everybody who worked at the clinic, and I didn't feel like I could in good conscience post that on the clinic face page where it wasn't my own face. But as for copy pasting it over to a page with my own face on it, where it is entirely my own express opinions, then I did feel like I could do that. So I would edit them down a little bit, but not before copy pasting the original and putting it on my own page.
Awesome.
And
Lucky
then I would,
for us.
and then I would make a more palatable public facing one to represent the opinions of many. And so kind of the confluence of all of those things, of quite a lot of practice of saying a great deal of things and trying to distill it into ways that explained it and made sense to people, of feeling like I didn't want things to be paywalled from people so that they couldn't access it, just like simple and helpful information, and of having the time and work to begin working in a social media platform. Then I started my page, The Occupational Therapist. I'm very fortunate that I named it something good instead of something cringy, because I still like it.
Yep.
And then, really nobody looked at it for like 6 months. And then I wrote a post about Bluey, and then that hit the Bluey fan page of some kind. And then all of a sudden, like 700 people were looking at it. And that was the biggest snowball I could possibly imagine. And then it hasn't ever stopped ever since then.
Yeah. Wow. You've had a big connection to Australia for a long time then.
I have. So that actually really did it. I had no plans of coming to Australia in the first back then. But from very, very early on, 50% of my followers or more were Australian. And so I became, I learned how to write globally. Not that I do it perfectly, but I learned how to write for a more global audience very quickly, and not just only for a US audience, because I wasn't ever trying to be exclusive. I just didn't have any practice talking to anybody outside of the States. And so then I tried to start fixing that.
Beautiful. Well, I'm curious if we can wrangle some of this and say, can you share a story about a map or a set of ideas that you've found helpful for you or for the parents you work with, particularly when parenting does feel overwhelming?
Oh, yeah. If I was going for something, then I would probably, if I'm just going for literally anything that's a helpful outline, then probably I think that the thing with the most impact for the smallest thing is learning about proprioception, which is not a small thing in and of itself. I'm trying to write a book about it right now.
Cool. What is it? What is it? I kind of know what it is, but I wonder.
Proprioception is one of your body's senses, in addition to the 5 senses that you've learned about. And I'm going to try to keep it small and not deep dive. My brain's wanting to run off in big rabbit hole directions. Your sense of touch, for example, if I came up to you and I touched your arm, then you would, what it means for you to feel that is that there are nerves in your skin. They, feel the touch, and then they carry that message to your brain, and they give it information like what temperature was it, what direction was it, how hard or soft was it, what texture, all of those things make up your sense of touch. If I squeezed your arm instead, not to hurt you, but just like a squeeze, you would both be feeling that with your skin, but you would also be feeling a deeper sense that comes from your muscles and your joints. And that deeper squeeze is your proprioception. What your brain uses proprioception for is to make a map of your body in space. So I can close my eyes and still touch my nose because I have a good sense of how long my arms are, where my nose is at. Even if I close my eyes and move around a bunch, I can still touch my nose because I'm not using my sense of vision for it. I'm using my sense of proprioception, my inner mental map of where my body's at in space. However, in addition to being super important for knowing where your body's at in space, proprioception also has a really strongly emotional regulation component to it, where the sense of proprioception is intensely linked with your emotional regulation. And most of the things that people do to regulate themselves by default, even in bad or inconvenient or inappropriate or socially awkward ways, but what people do by default or what feels instinctively like it makes sense, is proprioceptive things. So if you think about a toddler, because toddlers don't usually have a lot of concern for social propriety or pride or dignity or what is, going to impact somebody else, but they're kind of just acting on instinct. If you think about what a toddler does when they're dysregulated, then most of the things that any given toddler might do when they're dysregulated are things that seek proprioception input. And I conceptualize proprioception as going into 3 smaller categories that are maybe a little bit easier to picture. One of those is exertion, exerting your muscles, anything that involves exerting your muscles. So if we're picturing a toddler, running away really fast, screaming at the top of your lungs, those things exert your muscles. Picking up something heavy and throwing it. Also
sweeping everything off the table.
Sweeping everything off the table.
Yep.
Those things all exert your muscles. Then the second category is impact. Any part of your body impacting against something else. Hitting, kicking, throwing yourself down at the floor, beating your fists on the floor. Depending on with what speed you hit all of the things off of the table, that might also have some impact in there. Those things give your body impact proprioception. And then the third category is pressure, which tends to be like a slower motion or lower energy proprioception, whereas exertion and impact are a little higher energy. But pressure, when you're dysregulated, might be clinging to your parent, wrapping yourself up in blankets.
I used to play a game where it's like, this is the worst shoe in the world because they cling onto my leg and I couldn't.
Yes, exactly that. Yes, grabbing onto. So like it's like a silly game a lot of the time, and then you're getting that pressure through a way that doesn't have to be dysregulated. But if you think about when you've got a kid who's like moaning and just like flopping on you and just like wants to be on you and wants to like whine on you, that's very pressure seeking. And so, we try to learn like how to grow out of these things or how to use different strategies in these things or whatever. But I think that there are a lot of people who still feel like when I am super duper mad, something totally sets me off, I want to punch a wall or I want to throw my phone across the room because it's making me so mad. And a lot of the language we use to describe how we're feeling when we're mad. This printer is making me so mad I could throw it out the window or whatever. We're describing things because so it's not just that we're being out of control or we're being bad or we're being socially inappropriate or whatever. It's that we're real. We have this deep innate sense, whether we know language for it or not, we have this deep innate sense that things that give us proprioceptive sensory input are regulating to our bodies. It is regulating for our bodies to feel that input, and it helps bring our bodies back to baseline. And so even if we don't do them, or we just talk about them, or we just think about them or whatever, it's because we know on an instinct level that feels like it would be helpful. And not helpful in the logic or moral sense of like screaming at my boss would help solve the situation that I'm in, but helpful in the body physiological instinct sense of my body is out of whack and out of, it is dysregulated. And screaming would help, would do a bunch of exertion from my lungs and from my rib muscles and from my abdomen. And that would help bring my body back to physiological regulation. Now, of course, screaming at my boss would cause a lot more problems than it actually solved, but it would physiologically feel like it helps because it does that. And so once you have that information, what you can do with that is find ways to build in proprioceptive activities throughout the day before you get to the point of maximum dysregulation where you're using an emergency strategy. So like if I know that I'm a screamer, then a preemptive activity that mimics that without hurting anybody might be singing songs along in my car really loud or something like that, or taking deep breaths. But everybody says deep breaths and they don't know why. And this is one of the reasons why. Like, it's not just like deep breaths because breaths are great. It's deep breaths because it actually is doing something in your body. Or if somebody knows that, their impulse is to hit or to throw something when they're frustrated, whether it's an adult or a kid that we're talking about, then you might know that doing things that involve that exertion or that impact would that are preemptive activities like, oh, I really like to toss a ball around with my kid. And, then I'm getting the chance to build throwing into my day, or throw pillows and blankets at my kid and them flop around in them. And, it's like we're having a pillow fight, but I don't have to get the like touched out sensation of them climbing on me. Or things like that, then so one thing you can do is you can use the proprioception to preemptively build in activities throughout the day. And the other thing you can do, which is much harder, is to find yourself a substitute for when you need an emergency coping strategy, so that you don't reach for the one that is harmful.
Yeah, I used to have a door off the kitchen into the shed, and when it got too much, I would go out into the shed and like get a tea towel and like wring it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that way I could come back in and go, okay, now I can handle my kids,
right?
Whatever was hard.
It makes perfect sense to people at a body level, even if people are not. And I mean, sometimes I work with parents who are doing things they regret. They're screaming or they're whatever, getting out of control and feel like they're losing control of their body. But even parents who are not losing control of their body, but they still have this feeling of, I just want to scrunch something or hit something or clench my fists or throw something or whatever it is. It doesn't make you an evil, horrible person for being able to recognize on an instinct level, my body wants proprioception sensory input because that would help it physiologically regulate. Like that's not, I had a lot of, just like soul crushing shame in my head about the way that this anger would feel in my body, because I didn't learn anything about how to deal with anger growing up. And so as I got into adulthood, it was just like, what is wrong with me that I'm just like this horrible person with these angry impulses in my head, even if I wasn't doing them. It's like, what is wrong with me that I just want to like ball my fists and scream? Like, what is up with that? And it's like, it serves a physiological function. And so my brain being like, oh, I know how to do that is no different from my brain seeing food and being like, oh, hey, I could eat that. Or like, my brain seeing, being like, oh, hey, I want to breathe. Like, yeah, I want to do things that physiologically keep my body feeling normal. Like, that doesn't make me, evil or morally bad or whatever. And it also doesn't only have to be about anger dysregulation. That's the one that comes to my mind because it's the one that has been a real big theme in my life. But this can apply to fearful dysregulation. This can apply to silly dysregulation, where kids are almost like laughing and not even really having fun anymore, but like can't bring themselves back down. Like, this can even, it's rarer to have positive emotions that tip into dysregulation, like too excited or, silly could be kind of borderline between those. But it's any kind of dysregulation that your body really wants to expend that energy in some kind of a way. And proprioception activities are often a great way to do that. So when kids are real amped up right before bedtime, and parents are like just trying to like coax them into doing a calmer activity to try to like cue their body for bedtime, then it actually is helpful to know that there's this real pattern where if you do 15 minutes of high intensity proprioception something, high intensity exertion, high intensity impact, pressure is a little harder to do high intensity of. So like I already mentioned about doing a pillow fight, but where you don't have to be being touched by them. You're like sitting on the couch away from your kids and they're like trying to run across the room to you and you're like throwing pillows and stuffies at them. Yeah. So they're getting as much impact as they want, and they can really like even scale it up for themselves, because if you throw a pillow at them and they don't want a ton of impact, they can bop it away. But if you throw a pillow at them and they do want a ton of impact, they could be like, and they're like almost like bopping their own self with the pillow as they like flail and giggle and all of that. And so you do 15 minutes of high intensity proprioception something, either impact or exertion. And then you transition for 5 minutes into something lower energy, and you in your head expect that transition to actually go badly, or like not like to not be smooth, to not then be settling down. But in your head, you are saying to yourself, yeah, this is the 5 minute bad transition. Of course it's not smooth. And so you're not getting freaked out by it. You're not being like, they're never going to calm down, and that person on the internet actually had no idea what they were talking about, and my kids are never going to calm down and they're never going to go to bed. You're modeling with your body regulated and calm, and your breathing is calm, and your heart rate is slowing down, and your kids' bodies are picking up on that cue, because humans are super social creatures, and all that we have to do to regulate is to be around somebody who's regulated and have enough time. And so their bodies are picking up on those cues and they are beginning to mirror them, but their bodies are a little slower at processing than grown-ups are. And so it takes about 5 minutes. And so you're saying in your head, yeah, it's 5 minutes. They're climbing on my head. Okay. I'm modeling, chilling out and reading a book. And then after that 15 minutes of intensity and 5 minutes of bad transition, it usually slips into a very, very settled, now I have this regulation in my body. And of course, I can't say anything that's going to be ubiquitous for literally every child in the world. And so one of the things that I do in OT is that I'll experiment with this ratio to try to figure it out for the parents, but you can experiment with it at home too. Like, does 20 minutes of intensity and then 5 minutes of bad transition work? Or does 15 minutes of intensity, but the transition actually takes like 10 minutes because it seems like my kid's a little slow at picking up on that? Or whatever it is, you can experiment with it a little bit. But once you find the right ratio for your kid, then you have like this magic that to wrap all the way back around to the question you asked me like 20 minutes ago, that would be the like magic thing that I would hand to parents is like, it's not to like trick your kid into being calm or like to like get your kid to do whatever you want. But it's like, here's how to help your body get all of the movement that it could possibly want. And then the result of that is either you have more focus to try to do a quiet activity or more, like settledness in your body so that you can be able to fall asleep, or we need to, I'm having to take you into a setting that is made for grownups and not for kids, like a funeral or a, like something where I need you to be able to be settled for a little bit. And so I'm trying to do this for social reasons. And so I'm going to try to help you meet that need ahead of time so that you don't need to be meeting it during the time when I'm trying to expect more of you. And of course, this also has, differences on age and on, your kid's neurotype and on, like their ability level to do whatever the expectation is. And so you can't just take it and apply it to literally everything, but it's like the beginning of a recipe to show you how to tweak it and change it and try to get a feel for your unique kid and their unique brain.
Beautiful. I love that. Just trying to sort of connect in with who they are and where they're at. It's such a big part of it. So if parents listening in are feeling a little lost and they need a map or a true north point right now, what's one actionable step? I mean, you've given some great ones there, but what's one little step they could take today to help?
I would say that the kind of an unusual answer for people who are looking for answers about their kid, but unless you already feel like you've got it made and you've figured out everything about your own self, then I actually start with parents figuring out more about their own self. And so if you wanted one step, I would say either answer the question, what things help you feel good in your body? Or if you don't know the answer to the question, what things help you, the parent, feel good in your own body? Then that's totally fine, totally normal. I didn't learn it growing up either. Now is a great time for you to pay attention to things that you do in your day to keep yourself feeling good, whether they're proprioception or whether there's some other sense. Is there something that you reach for that is a taste that reassures you? Is there something you reach for that is a smell that reassures you? Is there something you reach for that is a sound or a sight or a touch, texture, or a movement or a something? What do you do that helps you stay feeling good throughout the day? And once you start knowing some of those, then you can start using them to meet the needs of your sensory self before you get to a point of feeling totally tapped out, feeling totally burned out and dysregulated, because you are using it as a feel-good strategy. And everybody does things to try to help keep themselves feeling good all day long. Kids just have a tendency to do ones that are like socially inconvenient because they're more thinking about themselves and less thinking about the social environment. And the more that you know about yourself, the more that you're able to model for your kids being like, it's so basic that it sounds laughable for me to say it. But a lot of times we don't say out loud that we're doing the things that we're doing for sensory reasons. But if you just start commenting, I'm going to sit down because my legs are tired. Mm-hmm. I'm going to have a drink because I am thirsty. I'm going to take a deep breath of this candle because, I like the way that it smells. I want to sit and watch I've got a lava lamp. I want to sit and watch the nightlight for a minute because my eyes love the way that it looks. And those, like I said, they sound so basic that they sound laughable, but it is communicating, just like these tiny little basic needs that my body has or wants or craves or wishes for are like normal for me to go around meeting. And it is also normal for you to do that. And you're not a bad kid if you're trying to do that. And even if you're trying to do that in an inconvenient way, you're still not a bad kid. I might have to stop you from doing it because it's hurting somebody else. But that doesn't make you a bad kid. And we're going to figure out a way that works for you that doesn't hurt somebody else. And I just feel like that's the heart of everything that I do. It's like impact. It's really, really, really powerful. And the starting step would be knowing about yours, because you can't try to change your kids, or not even change. You can't try to guide your kids in discovering theirs until you know a little bit about yours.
Beautiful. Yeah, that really resonates with my experience, definitely, that it wasn't until I spent some time, the old put your own oxygen mask on first, figure yourself out, yeah. So this has been amazing, and I know this is just like the tiniest little drop of the ocean of what's certainly on your website and on the social media stuff that I've been following. Where can parents find out more about you or your work?
The primary place is my Facebook page, the Occupational Therapist. I have a website that is called occupational.com, and I try to back up my posts on there, but honestly haven't in a little bit. Because moving busy. Has taken a lot of my energy and capacity. Yeah. Same with, there's a Substack, occupational.substack.com, or occupationaltherapist.substack.com. And again, I also try to cross post things there, but it's all I can do some days to post things one place, let alone 3 places. And so, if you want the most up to date and the most current and everything, that'll be Facebook. If you don't use Facebook or have moved away from it for ideological reasons, that is completely fair and valid. And Substack or my website is the best way to get as much as you can. And then if you're like a auditory learner, my website has links to like a bunch of the podcasts and stuff that I've been on. If you're a reading learner, good news. I write constantly. And so there's a lot of posts, and I've also got a book called Your Child's Point of View. So lots and lots and lots of options. Yeah, that book's really useful. It gives a scenario from an adult's perspective and then gives some ideas about what might be going on for the child. So that's been a great one. Kelsie, I want to say thank you so much for your time. I think there's some real gold in there for parents listening, and I really appreciate you and everything you're bringing to the world. Thank you. Thank you so much. This podcast is produced by Miralinga, thanks to funding from Healthway. I'm Belinda Smith, Manager of Parenting Services at Miralinga. If you'd like to know more, you can visit our website, www.miralinga.org.au, or if you'd like to get in touch, send us an email, parenting@miralinga.org.au, or visit us on socials. Thanks.